Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Politics, one of the hosts, and I welcome you to this wonderful network where today we talk about the world of politics, an increasingly divisive and turbulent world. We are on the heels of an election in India, a historic election, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is about to declare victory in an election much closer than what was predicted, a landslide. But he will be the first Indian Prime Minister since Jawaharlal Nehru to be a Prime Minister for 3 times in a row. What does this mean for India? What does this mean for the world? And should Modi be concerned that he came in with much narrower margins than predicted? We'll be talking about that. Meanwhile, while everyone's eyes are on India, the world's largest democracy, all eyes are on Israel, with President Biden calling for a UN resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. Will this be the beginning of the end of the Israeli war? Will there ever be peace? And how will this affect Joe Biden and his chances for re-election, while he is running against the first former president of the United States convicted or charged with the crime? Now, we don't know what's going to happen with the sentencing, but this is historic, and we don't know whether Donald Trump will be running the country from an orange suit in jail, which, by the way, could happen since a president cannot pardon these crimes because they're state crimes. Trump has a number of other cases pending, particularly the one on the federal insurrection case. All this going on while Mexico has elected a very liberal progressive, the first female president in Mexican history. We'll be talking about that. It really seems like a sci-fi novel out there, Tom Clancy novel gone rogue, and we are preparing for D-Day on June 6th, Thursday. So we'll be talking a little bit about World War II, and in this show, World Politics, what does a post-World War II order look like today? Is it completely gone? Is it disrupted? Is the international rule system that we've had in place since 1945 gone, with dictatorship on the rise, democracy on attack here at home and abroad? Who knows? But we can never forget the greatest generation who paid the ultimate price. And what would have happened if D-Day had not prevailed? We'll talk about that on Thursday, D-Day itself. If there was another universe and D-Day didn't happen, we all could be living in a very, very different world. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to bring on our esteemed panel. Kimberly Calhoun, the founder of the network, Mark Lee, the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the scenes, always bringing us together, Rick Rosner, and others who may be joining on this engaging, informative discussion on the turbulent world of politics. And, of course,
great intro and everything. You did an amazing job, as you always do, and everything. But I do have a quick question for Sasha, because one of the things that I've been hearing about, and you kind of alluded to it, is that with all that's going on and with world politics, there is sometimes a thing known as psychological warfare. And we know that there has been this whole notion of even how Russia is handling that, because there, of course, there is the Paris Olympics, and I did hear earlier today, which I was going to bring up in the World Edition, that apparently there were some people that were laying coffins out on the Eiffel Tower, and we're saying that this would be what the French soldiers would be like if they were to get involved and to come to the aid of Ukraine. So it sounds like they're trying to play some psychological warfare, and we know that psychological warfare can even take place in our local politics. I was just wondering your take on this, Sasha, and apparently they are trying to play this game of psychological warfare by laying some coffins down on an iconic figure to art and history, that being the Eiffel Tower.
Who is playing psychological games is obviously Biden's administration, which finally gave Ukraine the green light to use American-supplied weapons to strike targets inside Russia. Hallelujah. But it just may be too late, as Russia is already deep into its offensive in the Kharkiv region and has substantial forces stationed on the front lines, ready to push deeper into Ukraine. The administration's long-awaited decision is the latest example of what's become a troubling pattern. Ukraine asked for a specific capability. The US waits months before delivering it out of fear of provoking Moscow, and the Russian army takes advantage of the delay, while Ukraine is unable to capitalize during the pivotal moments of the conflict. And unfortunately, the situation happening over and over again. Maybe this time, though, could be different because the void of Biden's administration was fulfilled by Ukraine's European partners. They got great supply of Storm Shadow missiles and French missiles, which are basically based on Storm Shadow technology, and they can fire as far as 300 kilometers away. And although I must admit that the transport plane, the huge transport plane with all kinds of weapons, keep coming to Poland and Romania from the United States every 9 minutes. There is a plane landing. So that could be somewhat a different scenario because the most vulnerable situation for Russians is Crimea. Crimea is on one side, there is a bridge which could be liquidated or at least ruined, that it would be impossible to use. And on the other side, there is a railway from Donbas region to the entrance to Crimea. And if that would be somehow incapacitated, then Ukraine can relatively easy take over Crimea. If that will happen, I think the war would end very quickly because Putin's regime will be toppled if he will lose Crimea.
So, Mark, you talked about psychological warfare and the world going crazy. So between 1920 and the end of World War II, the world went super crazy. Fascism, the KKK in the U.S., war that killed 50 million people. So, and we had two means of propaganda that were new: radio and movies. And Russia was, or the Soviet Union was pumping us full of BS via the movies. And today we've got new forms of media, social media, that Russia uses to amplify the craziness. And in the 20s, we had people recovering from the Spanish flu, which messed up people's brains. And we're finding that COVID now messes up people's brains. So there are lots of parallels between worlds gone crazy 80 years apart.
Yeah, I think, and we're going to be talking about that on, I just wanted to set the stage for Thursday's discussion. I may actually not be here, so I wanted to kind of bring it up today. But I think what's interesting is that the post-World War II order, I mean, there's four things to observe about D-Day, and I think it's interesting to look at world politics today. If D-Day hadn't been successful, the Holocaust could have gone on for much longer. Europe would have been stronger. Hitler might have, been able to be successful. The morale would have been down for the U.S. Communist influence could have risen even faster, and dictatorship would have been kind of the norm of the government. We don't know, but the bottom line is that we were able to fight, end Nazi Germany earlier. We were able to bring an end to World War II. But what we often don't realize is the relative period of, there was a Cold War after World War II, but there was a sense that you could not attack another nation and violate the rules-based system that we had in place. But today, it really seems like that is kind of going by the wayside with these attacks from Russia going into Ukraine, the thought of China invading Taiwan. We're seeing dictatorship rise all around the world. Prime Minister Modi not doing so well, even though it is world's largest democracy. There are a lot of people out there that say he's running India like a dictatorship, targeting religious minorities, Muslims and Christians. You can't write anything bad about the Indian government, or you're basically put in prison, or they take away your pen and paper and computer. Lots of things out there about that. So what's happening to democracy? What's happening to freedom? And I think that when we remember the Greatest Generation, we look back and we look at all these things and think about it, folks. This was probably the most important day in the history of the world. If you had to look at this day, D-Day, was very significant for the world order. And we honor those World War II soldiers who died for our freedom that we've enjoyed for, and think of the innovation. The last thing I'll say is we had a pretty good run in the U.S., with the rise of middle class and a lot of innovation, research, and building out of our infrastructure. Go ahead, Rick.
We got incredibly spoiled because our continent was basically untouched by World War II. The rest of the Northern Hemisphere was in ruins. And post World War II, the U.S. had half of the world's manufacturing capacity. And that kind of spoiled us. We think we kind of deserve to be in charge, and we think we're good, and we think we should always win, and we need to work harder on ourselves and our place in the world.
But speaking of being spoiled and all along those lines, and I was actually going to bring this up to something that Kimberly just brought up and everything, because she asked the question whether we are still recovering from COVID and all along those lines. And I can tell you, as an event planner and as one that goes through a number of events, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well, Steve, that you would not hardly know that there was a pandemic. Because like I said, I catch the bus regularly and I don't see hardly anybody wearing masks, even though the masks are provided. And I can tell you that there are events that are jam-packed. I mean, whether it's the ballpark, whether it's the festivals, whether there's a number of other things. So it's almost as if people forgot that this took place about 3 or 4 years ago and are moving along as if there are no longer any concern. So what is your thoughts? You were a scientist, you were an engineer, but what is your thoughts? Because like I said, I know you get around just like I get around, and it's every time I turn around, it looks like there's more and more people going around, and I'm even hearing people that are like saying, I didn't know anybody that died, so maybe it didn't really happen, or maybe it was a conspiracy or a pandemic. So I'm damn hearing people that are throwing that out more than I would like to hear it said and everything. So what is your take on that?
So
I frankly am not going to respond to COVID's questions because it's complete waste of time. Those who will get COVID and will not be able to cure it, they will die. And those who will not get COVID, they will not die. And that is all I can comment on that. However, I would like to make a comment to what Steve and Rick had said just a few minutes ago. Number one, Second World War. Do you know Second World War started on September 1st of 1939. It ended on May 8th, 1945. However, interestingly enough, on the 1st of September 1939, it was not just Hitler who started the Second World War. It was also Soviet Union who overran Poland together with Hitler. And only on June 22nd, 1941, when Hitler attacked Soviet Union and almost destroyed it, all of a sudden, Russians became good guys. They became partners. They ended Second World War in Berlin, and they were giving all this accolades that they are the winners. They're not the winners. They are ones who caused Second World War by making a pact with fascist Germany. It's 6 million Jews who were killed because of the actions of Soviet Union. So when you want to tell me that we are going to celebrate and we are all brothers and we are all for peace, excuse me, you don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about enemy who is for 80 years now threatening to destroy all world. United States, first one. That's what all happened. And when there were several moments when U.S. could take advantage of its enormous might, economical, the military, they had every cards in the game that they needed. And there was a casus belli, by the way, when the Soviet Union made a blockade of West Berlin. They could start the war right away, and U.S. already had quite a few nuclear bombs that would stop Stalin of doing anything. He would remove the blockade just because of the telephone call. Stop it, remove it. Thank you. No, United States is inherently, even now, what they're doing with the Ukraine, with Israel, they are such cowards, to tell you the truth. It's unimaginable cowardice of United States that let all these wars even today still going on, and this is inexcusable. And there is no cure for that. So all United States people will have to pay the price.
We're in another huge conflict, and it's hard to see what the sides are, but we're in either a partnership or a conflict with AI. Now, AI is stupid right now, but it won't stay stupid forever, and it will reshape the world as much as D-Day did. As it'll play out over the next 30 years, and we will end up being, maybe not the apex thinkers on the planet. The apex thinkers will be the people who most successfully merge with AI.
Well, I mean, you got some people that are thinking that we could have the Borg mentality and everything. Kim, did you have any response to what I said earlier about COVID and some of the other things? You're on mute right now. You're still on mute.
There we go. Yeah, I just try to keep excess noise out of the way. No, not really. I mean, and Rick makes a good point talking about how AI is, impacting a lot of what we're doing and what's happening. I think AI can become a huge spy for any of the people. I saw the question, who is the enemy? And this, if we're on the verge of another world war, or, things are heating up in every country because everyone's getting tired of the government screwing the people. I think that's, to me, I don't think that there's another world war coming on. I think that there's going to be a lot of small civil wars. And I think that people are just sick and tired of government being big government and making up the rules. And, I'll tell you right now, Trump comes in, becomes our president, and, decides that he's going to be our president forever and stuff like that. I think the people are going to have to revolt. The people are going to just have to stand up and just say no more. And there's no future for our youth anymore. I even saw someone post that today. I was watching the shows earlier, and there is no more future. We haven't left much of a future for our children, and that's disappointing. It actually, and there, who's anytime I talk to anyone, well, I don't like Trump, but he's better than Biden. I don't like Biden at all, but he's better than, why is it we have come to a society that our two best candidates nobody likes, but you're going to pick the lesser of the two evils? But we've got to get out of this funk we're in if we're going to become a superpower again, because we're not. We are not. I see India becoming a superpower. I see China becoming the next superpower. They are probably some of the most patient people in the world to sit by and just wait for everyone to make mistakes. I see Russia partnering with the right people. Okay. And I see that entity becoming the next superpower while we're fighting amongst ourselves. Germany's fighting amongst themselves. All the countries are. France, everybody.
There's another trend that will reshape the world, and that is we're not making babies anymore. But the U.S. and 1/4 of the countries on Earth have declining populations. Eventually, it'll be 3/4 of the countries on Earth, because coupling up for making a couple to marry and have kids is tough. It's a lot of work to be with somebody. And in olden days, like the 70s, that was the only way to have fun and to have sex. And now there's so much entertainment. And if you want to just stay in your parents' basement and look at naked pictures on the internet, a lot of people, the incels, have given up. But in a way, we're all incels because fewer and fewer people, as a percentage of everybody, are making kids. And that's a huge change and will affect the world's economies, but it might help a lot of stuff. It'll help climate change if there are fewer people.
But you say that, and there's Rick, you said that, and you said that several times, but this is not a new thing going on, because actually the current birth rate in the United States is 12.009. That's for the year 2024, and it was 12.023 in 2023, and it was 12.012 in 2022, and 12.001 in 2021. Even in 2020, it was only 11.990, and we can go back to 2017 when it was 12.198. So it's been hovering between the 12s and the 11s for several years and everything. Now, if you want to go way back in time and everything, yes, it was like around 15.525% in 1986, and if you want to go way back, it was like in 1966 when that was after I was born, but it was 18.984, and in the year I was born, 1962, it was 21.573, and of course there were some other years like the 50s where it was 24.268. So yes,
so you're saying the baby boom, we're at 12. I don't know what those numbers are exactly, but you say we're at 12 now, and in the baby boom we were at 24. So
well, and I want to add to what Rick said. It's not just about people becoming more reclusive and self-entertained. But it's also about the cost. Okay. You have people who are graduating from universities. They can't even barely feed themselves anymore because of their debt so high. They can't fathom. They can't buy a house. They can't have children. I will say this. I'm very proud of my family. We're having babies left and right. So every time I turn around, there's somebody announcing they're having a baby. But one of the things that some of my family members did is they stopped going to college and started building careers out of just building a career. They went out and worked hard and built a career for themselves. So, I truly believe that a lot of the problems with the down population ratio is related to, it's just too expensive. I mean, food's too expensive. It's too expensive to go to work. People they're depressed. Everyone I talk to has some form of depression, which I think that is a, rollover or butterfly effect from COVID, is that everyone I talk to has some form of depression now. So I feel like that there's no bounce back in that because we've missed that window and it's not going to get better. And then until we get things better controlled for graduating students, so that they can afford to live in our society, we're going to have a very, very uneducated society very soon. We're going to have this huge window where nobody's going to go to college and people are going to be having babies.
In the olden days, like when my wife and I got married, we had a net worth of 0, but we got showered with stuff by relatives. They helped us buy a condo and then a house, and then we got cars and we had jobs, and now we have a nice house filled with all this furniture that people in their 20s and 30s now couldn't even fit in whatever lousy little space they live in.
Hold on a second. You actually that doesn't happen, because I've got a friend that has got a couple of friends, including one in August, because the Road to the Apollo, our photographer, his son is getting married in August, and I know for a fact that he'll get showered with a number of gifts and everything that will be part of that starting anew. So this whole notion of starting
but
anew,
I don't think that everyone in general, he's right, it's not as prominent as it used to be. because people are just having to cover so much expenses in medical care now. Their future is kind of shot because everyone I talk to that's trying to retire, there is no good medical care system for them. And so it's too expensive and they can't afford to give money backwards anymore or a house. You know, most kids graduating from college, their college right now, majority of the loans that I have looked at to help students out are starting around $120,000 to $180,000, depending, and that's not a master's. Okay, that is not a master's, and so the parents are pretty flushed at this time. If the kids are paying for their own education, then the parents might be able to help them. But I don't think anyone has a spare 180 grand in their pocket anymore. And you know, the people like me, we're more concerned about, can I stay alive and live a comfortable life until I'm 85 to 100, because people are living that long. So, you know, I think Rick is right that the mass majority are not, you know, gifting as big as they used to. People are gifting. I go to baby showers all the time. They're not gifting a house and, oh, you know, here's a hospital wing because you just had a baby son. No, there's no more of that. I mean,
it depends on the.
Or, you know, here's my corporation because you just no, that people aren't doing that anymore. So
I would say it depends on the class of the people, because there are some rich folks that are still gifting entire wings.
There's some rich people, but the mass majority. I used to know a lot of middle class people, right? Hardworking middle class people who could do that. My in-laws had their houses paid for, right? All of them. By the time before they hit 50, majority of them had their homes paid for. So that's a huge aspect into how much you're going to give to your kids as well, right? You know, is your home paid for? Is your cars paid for? And a lot of people just don't have that right now. In fact, a lot of people have taken out second mortgages right now just so that they can sustain. And it, you know, doesn't mean that there aren't people who are wealthy enough to do that, but it just means that there's not as many people, and people are focused more on, can they survive another hard hit if we got hit with COVID again? I mean, that sunk a lot of people with no income. So
you should also be aware that today's people with certain means, they're becoming much more selfish and self-indulgent, and they don't particularly care so much, even for their close relatives. Because, for example, you're talking about 180,000 spare dollars for education, right? Do you really so much believe in education? Somebody did pay for your education when you were young? Probably not. However, so they think, am I going to give 190,000 for education? And what the education is it panacea? They will get good jobs and they will be able to make $250,000 or more a year? Absolutely not. They may get their diploma and still work in a local McDonald's, flipping hamburgers just as well, or be a server in a restaurant, hopefully 4 stars, not 3.
But Sasha, along those same lines, haven't there been a number of rich people that have been out there that literally have stated and have made it very clear that they refuse to pay for their kids' wealth? I want to say that Bill Gates and some others have come out, and I want to say even
but
Warren Buffett have said that they do not intend to have their offspring inherited, that they will have to find other ways or create their own wealth. Now, you got others that are not doing that.
We're talking about some of the richest people in the world. I'm not even talking about these people. They can do whatever they want. I'm talking about average people who worked all their lives, had some savings, have a little real estate here and there, and probably have $180,000 or even more in their bank account. And I'm not ready to suggest that would be a right move of their part to give the $180,000 for very questionable education, and the merits of this education and what they're going to really get out of it is very unclear. In the meantime, they have to now watch every penny. They cannot travel first class. They have to get the best vacation, maybe just go to local cottage and spend there a week or two. I'm not a proponent of that.
So maybe we're a little different than other folks, but I know that there have been conversations on this network and other networks about generational wealth. I've said it and I don't hide it, that my parents, namely my mother and her sisters, have passed it on. I mean, some of my cousins have gotten some of that property. As a matter of fact, one of them has a pond that they're expanding because it has come down to their generation. So I think that that is what more and more people need to do. And I think that there are some that are still continuing to do that. Now, it has become more difficult sometimes, but there are folks that are trying to keep certain things within their family structure and all along those lines. Because we were fortunate to have several properties that were owned by us and everything, and they're going from generation to generation. So now we went from grandma.
But if the generations don't pass away, then that wealth doesn't pass on. If the average lifespan goes to 85, then 90, then 95, then you've got, Rupert Murdoch, 93 years old, just got married for what, the fifth time? Billionaire.
Married a younger lady that was like 57.
Yeah. I mean, like, not everybody's going to be Rupert Murdoch, but everybody might be 88 and holding on to their money.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's just, well, guys, I got to run in a few minutes, but I think it's just been a great show. I'm glad I could be here. I mean, I think it's just, we don't know much about this leftist Mexican candidate. President.
I was going to ask you about that before you run away, because one of the things that just came down today, and may be in response to this, I know it's an issue that Kim is concerned about, but apparently Joe Biden has temporarily stopped granting asylum to migrants if illegal crossings pass a certain threshold, and he made that announcement. And some of the Texas Republican senators are having skepticism about this detail, but apparently he is trying to curtail the amount of people that are going to be coming across, because apparently that number would have to remain below a daily average of 1,500 for 7 days in order for the border to fully reopen for asylum seekers.
When Republicans are going to, here, I have a fun story about the Mexican election. The woman who won is Jewish, but people were saying that she was a fake Jew because in her speech, her victory speech, she thanked Jesus. And that's like, what kind of Jew is she? Her husband is named Jesus. So she was thanking her husband. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, let me find out about her.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Good point and everything. But Kim, you brought this as a notion about immigration.
Steve, what do you think is going to be if Trump's going to go to prison? Do you think he's going to be allowed to run for president?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Run for president.
Yeah,
and why hasn't the Republican head and
Well, let me explain that. This is a great question, and I think for our audience is really important. First of all, and I spoke about this on the radio last week, there's only 2 requirements to be the president of the United States: that you're a citizen of the United States and that you're 35 years of age. Believe it or not, there's nothing in our Constitution to prevent someone that's convicted of a crime to serve or run for the presidency. So number one, Kimberly, he can run for the president of the United States. Now, what makes this different than Richard Nixon is when Richard Nixon in 1973, the United States government passed what's called the Nixon Memo, which said that as long as a president was sitting in office, you could not bring a formal indictment against him. You'd have to wait until he was out of office. But Nixon saw the writing on the wall and realized the country was just too divided. He didn't have the votes in the House or Senate, so he resigned the presidency and handed it to Gerald Ford. This situation could be a little bit different because there are 2 things that can happen. Actually, there's 3 things that can happen. Trump wins the election and is convicted of a crime before the election, so he would have to go to prison. But you could be the president of the United States from prison. Now, the only way that he would be able to be relieved of these duties is the 25th Amendment. But the 25th Amendment is only by the cabinet of the president. So it's very doubtful that if he's already has a cabinet in place, those Trump loyalists would actually say, we're going to get rid of the president. So how would you have a president running the country from jail when it could happen? Kind of crazy. Point number 2 is that if he did stay in office and then was charged with a crime, if it's a federal crime, he could pardon himself. Now, so the Georgia case and the New York case are state cases. So there's no pardon there. But we could be in a scenario, let's say Joe Biden were to win, he could only pardon Trump for the federal crime, the insurrection crime, not for the New York case. Now, Trump himself can only pardon himself for federal crimes. The president can only pardon for federal crimes. So a long answer to your question is yes, Trump can run again. Trump can win and still be a convicted felon and run the country.
Well,
And-
thank you so much for explaining that, because I get hit with that a lot. But wouldn't it just be, I think it's a conflict of interest to allow anyone to pardon themselves. Why does that law exist? To allow
Well-
a president to pardon himself?
It's never happened before in history, but it could happen, right? I mean, Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, and they say that cost him the presidency against Jimmy Carter. Other presidents have pardoned for other crimes, but there's never really been a situation in history where a sitting president has pardoned himself. Now,
I think the Trump people would love it. The Orange Party would love this, I think.
yeah, I mean, it's just we're really going through uncertain times. I mean, I think that it's not good for the country that we're in this situation. All eyes are watching what's going on in America right now, the United States of America, concerned about what's going to happen. Now there's rumors that, I don't know how, but trying to get the Supreme Court of the United States involved in, the decision that was just made by the New York jury about convicting him on the hush money case. 34 counts. He was found guilty on all 34 counts of that. I just, this is just, I mean, he is in North Carolina. He's up by 5. Probably going to
Good neck country. You know what? If he gets convicted and goes to prison, this whole state will vote for him. So it's just redneck.
And the thing about that, after he was convicted, and I know Rick has to go, he raised $37 million in one day, right? I mean, so it's almost like it's charging people a lot more and getting the Democrats away from talking about employment, talking about jobs, talking about the Infrastructure Act, talking about the pandemic relief that Biden gave. And people are just saying, nope, housing prices are high, inflation is high, these things are out of control, and that's where we're going with this.
Well, it depends on, and this is what I tell people, it depends on which financial books you're looking at. For people who were well prepared and well invested in certain stocks and things like that, they're doing just fine, right? For people who were living day by day, I mean, even those people, though, I shouldn't say living fine, because, gas has gone up, everything's gone up, but their investments have gone up as well. But then you have the people who are struggling to make ends meet, who can't even refi their houses because the interest rate's so high, who are losing their houses. And I truly do not believe that our unemployment is under control. I think we have more people unemployed than what the Democratic Party is boasting about. And that's just me, because I've seen them tweak those numbers before. It's not that I'm pulling for the Republican Party. I'm just saying I have seen the unemployment numbers twisted before. So I don't think we're in a great economic situation, but I don't think it's as bad as they say it is. But I think what we need to do is what exactly you said. I think we need to sit down and talk about each of the problems and highlight solutions.
Yeah,
So today we got 5 primaries across America. We got New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Montana, South Dakota, New Mexico. And it might be the polls will start closing in 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if Trump gets a higher percentage of the vote than he has been getting. Even though Nikki Haley dropped out, she's been getting in some places 20-25% of the vote. So we'll see if being found guilty, these are the first post verdict.
But actually the first post-verdict notions were actually this notion. I don't know what y'all think about it, but there is a rising amount of people, because you were talking about folks dropping out, and there are a rising amount of people, I want to say it's close to 50%, that are thinking that Trump should literally drop out of the race because of these convictions. And this is a new polls that have come out that are as high as 50%. I think the lowest I've seen has been 40%. So there are a number of folks that are thinking that he should drop out. I'm thinking that with the kind of ego that he has, that would never happen and everything. But do you think that there is any push that the Republicans may get to try to get him to drop out of the race, and will he even listen to them whatsoever?
I think Republican leaders, they are too shrewd to allow this idiot to run for presidency being convicted felon. They keep him now only for his fundraising abilities. They are very shrewd. They tell him, okay, Donald, go for it. Raise more money. Here is 50 million. Here is another 100 million. And here is a convention. And he will be definitely sentenced on the 11th, 4 days before the convention. Just say, Donald, but we have pools of uncommitted voters, and they don't like the idea that you're a convicted felon. We can lose it all. And if they lose it all, they will lose the presidency, the House, the Senate, the governorships. Everything will fall apart, and they will have to rebuild the party from the scratch, from zero.
But they can't pull Trump, because if they pull Trump, say 40% of Republicans are MAGAs, and that's a low estimate.
I think it's less than 40. I think 33%.
All right, so say 33 of Republicans. So if they pull Trump, half of those people don't even vote, or they vote for Kennedy. And so right off the bat, the Republicans lose, 1/6 of all voters. Maybe 1/5 of all voters. Maybe they pick up some independents if they put in like a sane person like Mitt Romney, but it won't match the huge number of voters they'll lose, and they will get creamed. It's why neither party, everybody bitches about the two candidates. Neither party can replace their candidate, because neither party has another candidate who can pull as many votes.
Except once he's forced to replace. Forced to replace. It's a very different proposition.
Well, let's say Trump. I mean, if the Republicans were smart, if Trump were smart, which he isn't, he'd have a health issue, so that he has, he'll be.
But Doris Kearns Goodwin, a presidential historian, last week on Fareed Zakaria, her husband actually wrote speeches for JFK, but she made a good point. She says politics in many ways is like running a business. It's about, you can't run a successful business unless you have loyal customers that keep coming back. And what Trump has been able to do is there is an aura about him. There is an appeal with his base that is their guy, and they're loyal and they stick with him. And so Biden is kind of different. And oftentimes Fareed Zakaria always calls him the accidental president, because think about this. Joe Biden ran for president twice and lost. He ran in 88, had to pull out because of plagiarism. He ran in 2008, couldn't make it through the nomination process, so he pulled out. He came back and he won because of two reasons: Donald Trump and COVID, right? He was last in the polls, and he came back and won in 2020 because Jim Clyburn endorsed him in South Carolina. Remember that? It was like the Biden comeback. He became the president. But he's never really had, while he was the president, even before he was the president, that loyal base of Democrats, right? That 70% of Democrats or whatever that have said, you know what, we're with Biden. So now they're saying, well, we're with RFK, or he's too old, he shouldn't run, or, and so he's lost that base of his own party. And in a general election, this is what we don't know. I mean, I'll end with this. We don't know. The $1 million question is, it's different than in the general election than the primary. So if Trump is convicted, well, he's already been convicted. If he goes to jail, will persuadables in swing states want a president to run this country from a jail cell? Will they vote for Biden, or will they sit out the election?
What's going on?
And I know Rick's got a question, but before you leave, I really want to know this. Do you truly believe that the electoral, if Trump won while he's sitting in jail somewhere, and he did win because we got enough idiots in this country to vote for him. And I hate to say it, most of them are my family. Will the electoral vote put him into office because the people voted for him? Will the electoral do it?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Rick says yes.
The way it works is that you win a certain percentage of the state, and then those electors go to that person. So if he's a certified winner in, let's say, North Carolina, right, then the electors are going to go in. Now, we've had people in General Assembly in North Carolina that want to be able to switch it. That if they don't get the result they want to go in and pick new electors. I don't think you can do that, and I think that would eventually go to the Supreme Court. But yeah,
I think in 2016, 2 electors couldn't bring themselves to cast their votes for Trump, even though they had been appointed to do so. So there could be a mutiny, but it just won't happen.
it won't. It
Do you
won't
think
happen.
the electoral is already rigged to vote for Trump?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, I mean, if Trump wins the electoral votes of enough states, we've already had that mess in 2020 where Trump tried to send in fake electors. Nobody's going to allow any of the electoral college to vote for somebody that they weren't appointed to vote for.
Actually, the fake electors, it's in Democratic media. In the conservative, in the Republican media, they are being called alternative electors.
Right.
But I want to go back to Biden for a second. One of the problems, it's partly the Republicans' fault that Biden doesn't have a unified following. And it works like this. The Republicans keep shifting to the right and going more and more to crazy town, and it leaves everybody else under the Democratic umbrella. But that's a huge span from lunatic super progressives on the very left to almost Republicans on the very right. And it's this huge tent, and you're never going to be able to get the two halves of the tent to agree with each other. There's always going to be squabbling. And it's a better problem to have than the Republicans have, which is they keep painting themselves into the loony corner.
Yeah.
But that can be said on both sides. I mean, I definitely have voted Democrat most of my life, and I think I voted Democrat all the elections and everything. But I can tell you that there's some folks that are a little bit on the far side, on the whole Democratic side as well. Some people might even put the squad in that list. I'm not willing to do that. I think AOC has some good points, but there are other members that might have some very extreme views, maybe not as much as Marjorie Taylor Greene, but there are some folks that would argue that there are extremes on both parties, and it's a matter
But each end of the loaf has crazy people, but the Republicans are just like this corner of the loaf, which with a higher concentration of extreme people, and then the Democrats have 3/4 of the loaf potentially because their policies are what 3/4 of people agree with. But among that 3/4 of people, you've got huge disagreements between the super libs and the super middle of the roaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know, it's still concerning to me. Why should people even bother to go out and vote? Why do we even waste our time if our vote doesn't matter?
Well, now you're sounding like a 19-year-old.
No, it's not. I'm not. I'm tired of putting a lot of energy into who I think is the best person, and it's not going to matter at the end of the day. Why should anyone waste their time going to vote anymore? Because they vote for a person, the person wins, and the electoral takes it away.
No, this time the people will not vote for a person. They will vote against the person. And
Yeah, everyone's voting against a person. You're right.
That's
But
what
then-
Nobody's voting for a person anymore.
That hasn't
Everyone's
been going on for a while. I mean, I know people that literally, even back in the 80s, they voted either for or against Reagan because they didn't like his views. And the same can be said for most of the elections that I am aware of and have been involved in,
I
including
think-
local elections. So I think that a lot of times people are not even paying attention to the issues as much as they should, and they are voting kind of like they do. I hate to bring up religion, but kind of like they do in church and everything, for the cult of the personalities and all along those lines. So they're going for the personalities. And I guarantee you, you went to most people and asked them what issues they are concerned about, either nationally or locally. They would probably, many of them would not have an answer to why they're.
Biden got the most votes in history largely from people voting against Trump.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
and I think
but that may not have mattered at the end of the day. I mean, the electoral still
but
changes.
also when we go back in history, we often forget that what brought Trump to power, okay, and this is something important. We're sort of getting away from global issues. I'm trying to research a little bit about this Mexican president, because it's a big deal. First female president in Mexico history, very leftist, progressive. But here's the deal: when Trump won, and this is his appeal. So his typical base is white, non-educated voters in rural America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the man who leveraged before he was in all these criminal cases and everything. We're talking 2016 when he became the president. He said, "Make America great again. We're going to bring manufacturing back. We're going to build a wall. We're going to keep these illegal immigrants out because they're bringing rape and murder and the thugs and all that stuff." And he really resonated with them. But he also had Democrats, just like Ronald Reagan Democrats. There were Democrats that pulled the lever for Trump because they felt that they were left behind, particularly in the rural areas, states like Ohio, states like Pennsylvania, states like North Carolina, where there are two different worlds. Where Kimberly and I live in Wake County, it's a very rich county. A lot of people work here, big salaries. But when you go out to, rural North Carolina, it's very different. And so this is what has made this guy, which is kind of ironic, that the Democrats have moved to become more a party of elite, where, I'm hosting an event. I'm not even going to go, but to go to the event with 4 Democratic governors is $20,000 a head. To go meet with Wes Moore, Gavin Newsom here in Cary, $20,000 or $15,000 a head. So if you have money, you're a Democrat funding all this stuff. I'm not saying Republicans don't have money, but
isn't that across the board? Because I saw in a Republican event that was similar kind of prices and everything. So unfortunately, a lot of people are not even trying to reach out to their constituents, kind of to what Kimberly was talking about, and all along those lines. So yes, there's all these high-priced events, both on the Democrats, Republicans, and I would even argue some of the independent tickets as well. And yes, they oftentimes are not even.
I have a question for Steve.
Yeah, but the point I was trying to make before the question is that Trump was able to shift the narrative and make the Republicans for the non-elite. And so that's what's made him rise to prominence, is people look at him as, I'm the downtrodden, I'm out of work, I need my country. And the Democrats used to be remember Bill Clinton? I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Bill Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. That's what brought Bill Clinton into power, right? Go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
The question for you is, why did Biden do the executive order on immigration right now? I kind of suspect it's because the Supreme Court is going on break in 2 weeks or something, and they won't have time. Is he doing it now because the courts won't have time to shut him down, or what?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also Immigration Heritage Month, which is kind of a month where we talk about immigration, ask people to share their stories. So he probably did it to make a political statement, the court's going into recess. And, immigration is just such a broken system. Legal immigration, undocumented immigrants, ICE, certain states are wanting to make sure that we detain these immigrants and put them in jail.
I got an answer to that problem, and it would solve a lot of our other financial problems. Go to a flat tax, get rid of the IRS agents and turn them into agents that process the immigrants. There's a lot of IRS agents. And they're tough. And I think that they would be very thorough, but they would get the job done. They would sit there and process them every day. That's their job.
Have
8
you
to
ever
10
tried
hours
to-
a day. And
Have you
build
tried
a
to
for a wall along the border. Don't build a wall, build a prison all the way down there. Go ahead,
Have you
Rick.
ever tried to call the IRS? They don't have enough people.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, they just don't
yeah.
answer their phone. They have a lot of people, but they're too busy auditing innocent people.
They're not. Computers do most of the auditing.
Yeah, they're
This
very
bill
short.
was
Well,
designed to
they
get
told that they sit and do the audits. Trust me, I had 5 agents in my room. 5, not 2, 5, not 1, 5. So, you got to take a look at the amount of money they waste doing whatever it is they're trying to do. But I don't think that they are needed anymore. Just do a nice, easy, flat tax, make it simple so everybody kind of pays the same percentage across the board. Then we get money that comes in that doesn't get written off on taxes. I know a lot of rich people, including Nick, who would hate this.
So,
But then,
along the
because
same
they
lines,
get
are we
so
gonna?
many tax deductions, they don't end up, they get everything back. I'm not saying they don't pay in, they get everything back. You got to read the books to understand how they work. I don't think they're all crooked, but I'm just saying, that's their legal right to do that. But we could just eliminate that. The money coming in could be good, used for good. But the IRS agents can sit there all day long and process immigrants, and we,
Well,
have
that same background and everything, we've got a few more minutes to go. I guess we could get rid of the repo agents because I do know some people that have been in that field, and we could probably send them down to the border as well because there are still people that are
we
out
can
there
send them to
working.
the border. But think about this: there are immigrants in every city of the country now, so you don't necessarily have to send all the IRS agents to the border. We're not relocating them; they could sit their butts right where they are right now and process people. So, I mean, but it would be a better use of people. The tax system would be better. We would actually have money that comes in and doesn't go out. I mean, it would just be a cleaner system for everyone. The regressive and aggressive tax system is stupid. It doesn't work, and it doesn't prevent people from writing off way too much on their taxes.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I know we're winding down. I was just going to
Yeah,
say something to the whole birth rate conversation because apparently, if we want to go to places that apparently Rick wants to go to that have higher birth rates, we all need to head to Israel, Panama, Argentina, Guam, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Seychelles, Antigua, and Barbados, and Bahamas, and New Caledonia, French Polynesia, Uruguay, Bahrain, New Zealand, and Aruba, because all of them are above us in the United States. Israel apparently has a birth rate of 18.768 and all along those lines. So maybe that's where we all got to head to is those particular countries and everything, because apparently those are the places that have a higher
Those are
birth
the
rate.
places where people look good in bikinis.
That is true.
Well, folks, I'm going to close out today. I've got to leave, but real quickly, it's been a turbulent, divisive world. I'll be talking next week about Gloria Sheinbaum, a climate scientist, the first female president of Mexico, who will be following the leftist Obrador in Mexico. It'll be interesting to see if Trump is the president of the United States, how that relationship with Mexico is going to go. Probably not off to a good start. We obviously think Sheinbaum will be supporting Joe Biden behind the scenes. And there's been some rumors about OpenAI getting involved in the Indian elections. Don't know how much of the rumor that is, but we'll know tomorrow morning about Narendra Modi. But it has been confirmed that Modi, who was predicted to win in the landslide, is barely holding on to majorities in the lower chamber of India. So now he's going to have to work with the Congress Party, the Socialist Party, to have a coalition government. This is a huge setback for the prime minister. Nobody saw this coming, and so we're going to be analyzing what does this mean for India's future, and what does it mean for the global economy? Because many of his reforms have worked to build infrastructure and move India up so we'll see what happens. Or maybe it's just a sign of the times that you never take an election for granted, and some of his policies have people angry, and so they voted for the opposition party. But I think it's fair to say that the Nehru dynasty has officially come to an end. They dominated Indian politics since 1947. Jawaharlal Nehru, his prime minister, whom my grandfather knew, prime minister of India, Indira Gandhi. Her son Rajiv was assassinated. Now you've got the grandson Rahul Gandhi, and I think it's the end of the Nehru dynasty. I think that they've lost almost every election now, and so who knows who India will be looking forward to after Narendra Modi. But there have been already rumors talking that they are looking for a successor. So anyway, with that being said, we will be back next week. Thank you all for being with us today. You guys can
See you
continue.
Thursday. We'll take
See you
care, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.